Hello all. A very good day to all of you. This is Vilasini from Veranda IAS and friends. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா the Hindu daily editorial analysis for the date 25th August 2025. So yes, the editorial of discussion for today is a topic from your GS paper 3 environment, right? In the context, the topic that we will be discussing is about invasive species and if whether India is underestimating the cost of dealing with invasive species, right? So in the context there, the author has mentioned many significant points, right? So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா let us understand all of that one by one. So number one, invasive species பத்தி சொல்லியிருக்காங்க. Many facts have been quoted. For example, damage from invasive species, that is both plants and animals itself, right, on native ecosystems has cost more than $2.2 trillion worldwide. So this is a massive number. So ஒரு species invasive இருக்கிறதுனால the implication on the native ecosystem பார்த்தா this is the extent at which the damage is taking place, right? Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they've also spoken about, right, region wise ஒரு இடத்துல which is the most affected, least affected, right? What is the order? So இந்த இடத்துல Europe வந்து has the maximum negative impact, right, followed by North America and Asia. Next வந்து they've also spoken about right, usually in the invasive species which invasive plants are being very very damaging. So in the context certain examples of species are given. For example, lantana, right, water hyacinth பத்தியும் பேசியிருக்காங்க in the context of India, right? And எதனால வந்து இந்த invasive species spread ஆகுது, especially through transportation, right? And next வந்து what are some control measures which can be taken, right? For example, they have spoken about regulating the ballast tanks in ships, right? அது பத்தி பேசியிருக்காங்க, right? They've also spoken about global recognition posed by invasive species வந்து worldwide we have to recognize more research, இது பத்தி எல்லாமே பேசியிருக்காங்க. So this is the overall context of the editorial, but இதை வந்து in depth we will try understanding, right? So as you all know, நம்ம ஒரு editorial analyze பண்ணும்போது we try incorporating what is called as the code approach, right? So in the code approach ல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா C stands for context, right? Next வந்து O stands for opinion, right? Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா D stands for data and your E basically stands for editorial takeaways, right? So you have context, you have opinion, you have data, and you have editorial takeaways. Talking about editorial takeaways, the takeaways can be further divided into what is called as ICES approach. So I வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா talks about the issues, right? C வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it talks about the causes, right? E வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it talks about the effects, right? And S வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it talks about solution or way forward. So let me tell you this, எல்லா editorialக்கு இது வந்து ஒரு force fit model ன்னு கிடையாது. Depending upon the context of editorial, either CODE or CDE, it can vary, right? So in the context because we're talking about invasive species, let us first understand a few things, right? So invasive species na enna? So in simple terms, invasive species is nothing but any non-native species which is introduced into an area and which leads to a reduction in the population of native species. இதுதான் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா invasive species. So இந்த invasive speciesக்கு சில characteristics இருக்கு. Number one பாத்தீங்கன்னா high reproduction rate. They multiply easily. Number two, high dispersal ability. ஒரு இடத்துல இருந்து இன்னொரு இடத்துக்கு they spread really well. And number three வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா there is a term, it's called as phenotypic plasticity. Okay, phenotypic plasticity. இதோட மீனிங் வந்து என்னன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா ability to thrive well in harsh conditions, right? So their physiological adaptations are quite good. So Indian context பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஏகப்பட்ட invasive species இருக்கு which have been very very damaging, right? Examples for invasive species particularly, I have made a separate video on invasive species. Please go watch it in the Veranda IAS YouTube channel. உங்களுக்கு கிடைக்கும். Okay, so now in the context if we try applying, right, the code approach, right? So context நம்மளுக்கு தெரியும், we are basically talking not just about invasive species but the accounting or the costs, right, that invasive species are imposing on existing native systems, right? So this is one thing, right? It is on context. Next, if we talk about opinion, right, many things have been given. For example, the author has said that irukra models for analyzing the threat posed by invasive species needs to be revamped, more efforts need to be taken. Talking about data, right? A lot of data has been quoted throughout. For example, they have said that Europe la dhaan the maximum negative impact irundhirukku because of invasive species, followed by North America, Asia, etc. Next, Indian context, they're talking about invasive species, they're talking about lantana camera, they're talking about other species like water hyacinth, right, which can be very damaging. And overall, what are some steps which can be taken, right? So, context pathatom, opinion pathatom, data and takeaways. All these are takeaways. N species are invasive and what measures can be taken to address them. So, in the context of pathingana, we have to understand, number one, what the context of this editorial is. So basically a global study was conducted which basically revealed that invasive species it has caused severe damages amounting to almost 2.2 trillion dollars worldwide. Okay, and compared to the earlier estimates, it is 16 times higher. That is one. Next one what they have said is the most damaging invasive species in the world, number one are arthropods, followed by that are mammals, right? So ivangalaala ஏற்பட்ட damages are very, very high. So next, talking about the existing data, the most affected country, the most affected continent worldwide with regard to invasive species number one, Europe. Next one it is North America. Followed by that we have Asia, Africa and then Australia. But Europe is heavily impacted. Talking about India one of the major challenges that we have is massive amount of underreporting. So documentation is weak, underreporting is there, right? இது எல்லாமே are posing severe challenges. Funding challenges, lack of research and development, lack of coordinated strategies, இது எல்லாமே is a major hindrance towards addressing the problems and the threats posed by invasive species. Next they've also said other things. For example, India பொறுத்தவரைக்கும் some major invasive species which are creating a threat is number one, water hyacinth, lantana camera, right? Nariya invasive species irukku. But this water hyacinth it has invaded majority of India's waters, right? So this water hyacinth, there is a very interesting backstory to it, right? It was introduced by the British into India because of its beautiful ornamental flowers. Bengal presidency le introduce pannanga. And initially it looked very attractive in the waters of Bengal. But later, eventually what happened was water hyacinth being invasive, it started spreading across the entire water body, right? Fullave cover panirchu. So native plants could not compete, native plants got eliminated. Next ennachu, widespread mortality of aquatic plants, widespread mortality of fish. All this happened. And next தண்ணியில இருக்கிற dissolved oxygen water hyacinth started taking up more and more, and this led to lack of dissolved oxygen for the fish and led to widespread mortality of fish. So native plants போயிடுச்சு, fish mortality நடக்குது, livelihood of fishermen is affected. The damage caused by water hyacinth was so heavy that it has a nickname, and the nickname is called as Terror of Bengal. Okay, so this is one interesting story for you with regard to an invasive species called water hyacinth. Idha தாண்டி பாத்தீங்கன்னா India there are many invasive species. For example, lantana is there, right? Then if we talk about Prosopis juliflora, இந்த மாதிரியான ஏகப்பட்ட invasive species இருக்கு, which will definitely you would have read in your static part as well. Okay, so overall in the editorial lantana and water hyacinth is also causing a great problem in cite பண்ணிருக்காங்க in the context of India. So now here what they are saying, what should be the ideal way forward? So number one, they are saying that effective monitoring, right, surveillance is required. Quarantine measures practice pannanga. They are saying that when trade takes place, try to be more vigilant, try to monitor more, right? Especially aquatic water bodies are spread agra water hyacinth either weed out pandradhukku we need to come up with innovative strategies, right? Next one, what they are saying is overall water hyacinth can have, overall invasive species can have a great impact on the economy, on the biodiversity, on the livelihoods of people, right? So here addressing this requires an immediate concern and approach. It has to be addressed really well, because if we don't address this in the long run, it is going to cost our economy very heavy. It is going to lead to a decline in our native species, right? Economic losses irukkalam, native species oda population affect agalam, right? And all this could be very, very damaging. So in the context there, please try to understand the way forward would be robust research and monitoring, right? Effective funding, the need for a coordinated strategy, all this will be the ideal way forward. So yes, in the context of please go and read about types of species and biodiversity, right? Next, read about invasive species, particularly examples of invasive species in India, plants as well as animals. Next one, also read about some case studies with regard to invasive species, and please do solve the previous year questions pertaining to this particular topic. I hope the discussion was useful. Thank you.
Veranda IAS, where your dream becomes reality.